Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a jam-packed video for you today. But to start it off, let's talk about Mr. Martin Armstrong, who is a cycles analyst with the help of his computer. A computer program that years ago, I have to say in my opinion, because you'll get a different story if you look up the government's narrative. Years ago, he spent several years, I think it was 7 or 8 years in jail, just in contempt because he refused to hand over his software to the government. But again, that's my opinion. Well, Mr. Martin Armstrong, just like Charles Nenner, are often very right about everything that they predict. And what Mr. Martin Armstrong is saying in this article here from an interview that he had with Mr. Greg Hunter, and you can go check out that interview on Rumble, and you should be able to get it off of this link that I'm going to leave you in case you want to watch the entire interview. It's about 48 minutes, 50 minutes long, but it's definitely worth watching. He says that war checks all the boxes, and this is why. It's like I've often said, ladies and gentlemen, when the government goes broke, it takes you to war and it becomes more tyrannical. Neocons know that the monetary system is collapsing, and of course, war checks all the blocks. The U.S. is being set up for a nightmarish fall, and haven't we been seeing that already, ladies and gentlemen, with everything else that's going on? And after I talk about Mr. Martin Armstrong's predictions here, I'm going to show you some other things that show how even more countries are leaving the dollar. It is accelerating, and the dollar, in my opinion, no longer the military. It used to be that the military was what backed up the dollar, right? And the petrodollar. Well, the petrodollar is going, but the dollar, ladies and gentlemen, is no longer going to be the power of the world as it once was. And the military is not going to be able to back it up, because we are going to have even more problems within our own nation than we are having with nations outside the U.S. There's going to be more civil unrest. There are going to be states that are going to want to secede. The country is going to become divided. And in the interview, Mr. Armstrong states that the United States will split up. Now, when he says they, he means the U.S. government and the war hawks and the government that want to control the world. He explains that they want war, but they also need it because the monetary system is collapsing. You have had interest rates at negative since 2014. I want to explain that to you really quick for those of you that don't understand what interest rates being at negative is. So let's say, for example, remember back when we still have interest rates at negative, by the way, just to let you know. Remember back when we had interest rates that the Fed was putting out at like 0.25%. Well, inflation at that time was like 2.8%, 2%. So if inflation is 2%, let's say, but interest rates are only 0.25%, it means that every year your dollars are losing 1.75% purchasing power. So that's negative real interest rates. Now let's take it to today, where interest rates, the Fed fund rate is about 4.5%, I think it is, 4.75. But look at what inflation is. Inflation is 6 point something, right? As the numbers that come from the government say. It's really a lot more than that if you go shopping at the supermarket, but they say it's 6 point something, but the interest rate is 4 point something. So we still have inflation that's going up higher than what the interest rate is, meaning that you still have a difference to the negative on how much purchasing power you have every year on the dollars that you've earned. Ladies and gentlemen, do you trust the water that comes out of your faucets? I don't, and I don't think that anyone should. That is why I am partnered with Simpure, the manufacturer of this reverse osmosis system and others. Simpure is currently offering a 20% discount on any of their reverse osmosis units, which means that you can have thousands of gallons of safe drinking water for as little as $112 for this system. I think it's a great deal. This system is easy to install, but more importantly, this system is affordable and will give you peace of mind that the water that you are drinking is safe. I will leave a link to their site and the code for 20% off in a pinned comment under this video. Now back to this video. And he says that any bond that's owned by any institution in Europe is a loser. They have lost so much money, it's incredible. And what happens? Nobody is interested in long-term debt, period, meaning that nobody wants to buy their debt in Europe. Same thing here in the United States. Even though interest rates are going up in the bond market, nobody in the world wants to buy the bonds because they have no confidence that we will be able to pay that back in the future, and inflation is a lot higher than the interest that they're receiving. Think of it this way. Let's say that you buy a bond, a U.S. bond for, let's say 4%. Let's say you buy a 10-year U.S. bond for 4%. Inflation, is at 6 point something percent. So you're guaranteeing yourself to lose money in the long run by buying a 10-year bond at 4%. And he continues to say that if you have interest rates rising and rates are going to be going up because the Fed cannot stop this kind of inflation, then you go to war. And him saying that the Fed cannot stop this kind of inflation, they can't, because the inflation is already there. We're just waiting for the inflation, meaning the pumping of money into the system, to catch up with prices. If you think that prices have already reached a plateau, think again. Prices only have one way to go. We still have a lot of inflation out there that have not caught up with everyday prices, and we will be feeling that, especially as more countries continues to dump the dollar. They have been borrowing money since World War II with no intention of paying anything off. What have I said in the past? This debt that the United States has is unpayable. It can never be paid, and they don't care about paying it back. The only thing that the government cares about is that the cattle, i.e., we the people, earn enough money with our labor to pay taxes to service the debt. That's all they care about. They know that the debt can never be paid back. That is why I've often said that it is you, ladies and gentlemen, it is we the people, the cattle, that back up the U.S. dollar, because we are the ones that earn the money into existence by our labor in order to service the interest on that debt. So as long as we can service the interest on the debt, as long as they can keep us working, going to work 2-3 jobs just to keep our heads above water, they're happy with that, because they know that they'll be able to steal your money to pay off the interest on that debt, and they'll be able to conduct all of the things that they want to do on the side that has nothing to do with the United States people, but people outside of our borders. How do you continue to fund a government if there's no buyers for the debt? This is on a global scale. So war checks all the boxes, he says again. They get to default on all this debt, which is the real objective. That is why Mr. Klaus is out there saying that you'll own nothing and be happy. And here he explains very well, and I will reiterate what he says in my words as to why it is that people that hold their wealth in dollars, in paper assets, will lose everything, ladies and gentlemen. You just have to learn how to read between the lines. He is trying to make it sound like they are doing this for you, of course. We are going to default on all debt and relieve you of all of your debt. All right, we are going to default on all debt. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so what is a debt? To you, what is a debt? Okay, to you, a debt is maybe a car note, a student loan, a mortgage, your credit cards that you have maxed out. To you and I, that is your debt. But what is debt, ladies and gentlemen? Let me show you real quick. This is debt, right? Fiat currency is debt. So if the debt is defaulted on, then what do you think happens to the value of this fiat currency? What else is an instrument of debt? A bond? Anything that is denominated in dollars that's made out of paper. So if you have bonds, if you have stocks, if you have this, if you have that, your pension, all right, that's all denominated in debt units. So when they default on all their debts, people that are sitting in paper derivatives of real money, right, which are dollars in our case in the United States and in a lot of countries around the world, are going to lose everything. This is because they are going to wipe out everything. Pension funds will be gone. That's why they are coming out with guaranteed basic income to replace your pension. They've got this all worked out. But nothing is planned, right? Things just happen by happenstance. I love those that say, how can you say that they planned this so long ago? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this has been planned for a very long time. Just like this thing that's going on in Eastern Europe with the big R and the big U, this has been planned for a long time. They knew that we were going to get to a point where we had to go to war in order so that they can preserve their power. You have to understand that you mean nothing to them. We are but pawns in this game that they like to play while they sit in their ivory towers. And to finish this one off here, Mr. Armstrong's sources say the real number of casualties in the Big U are at about 250,000 just military, not military and civilian. And he says that the Big R is not losing this war. And I have to say that I agree with him just from numbers that I've seen people from different states make, like from Germany, right? And in Europe. So this stuff that they're feeding you over here in the United States and in Western nations of what's going on in the Big U, you better take that with a grain of salt. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, in the United States and the Western states, especially in the U.S., we are at the end of a cycle, at the end of an era. A nation, historically speaking, has only lasted on average about 250 years before it starts to fall apart. And we can see that in the United States, we are reaching that 250-year mark from 1776. And you can see that we've started to fall apart years ago. It all comes down to the government. If we have a government that's moral and that uses real money, a country will last a lot longer. So our government, going from a foundation of morals and sound money, has gone to a foundation of no morals and fake money. And you can see what's going on right now. Our empire is falling. And this is why we need to protect ourselves by being as best prepared as we can be in every possible way. The United States, in my opinion, before I pass on from this physical earth, will see itself with a different name, or will see itself in two different countries, where it's going to be USA 1 and USA 2. Why? Because it's all a cycle. Why? Because human nature is very predictable, and human nature in itself is cyclical. So just prepare, ladies and gentlemen, because this is going to happen whether we want it to or not. China is ready to join forces with Russia to decisively stand up for national interests and promote mutually beneficial cooperation in all areas. What matters here, ladies and gentlemen, that China has now openly sided with Russia. I believe that they were sided with Russia a long time ago, but now they're telling the world, hey, we are with Russia. And what I don't understand, ladies and gentlemen, is China comes out and says, hey, we are with Russia. Now remember that when I speak of nations, I speak of their governments. I don't speak of the people. All right? And I keep saying this because I want to make sure people understand this, is that we are all human beings, and we all have one thing in common. Most of us have one thing in common. It's that we want to live in peace, that we want to be able to live off of our labor, feed our families, have a little house with a half an acre or whatever it is, right? But we just want to live in peace. We don't want to be bothered. We want to be left alone. But governments get in the way of human progress by doing the things that they do in order to stay in power. So China here, China's government, they align with Russia, and they say it openly that they align with Russia. Well, I thought that Russia is supposed to be this huge enemy of the United States, right, of the Western nations. But then here you have China sucking up all of the United States oil off of our Gulf Coast. China sends super tankers to U.S. Gulf on crude oil buying spree. So as the United States is draining its SPR, right, its Strategic Petroleum Reserve, look at this. This is only as of November of last year. We're at about half of what we normally hold in our SPR. And it's been sold off in order to keep the prices of oil down. The SPR is a strategic petroleum reserve that we keep for times of true emergencies, ladies and gentlemen. But we are selling it in order to fool the people into thinking that the economy is better off than what it really is. In my opinion, this is criminal. Just as of November of last year, we were down to 388 million barrels in the SPR. Okay, and now we're sitting at about, I think I heard it was another 26 or 29 million barrels that were authorized to be drained from the SPR. How much more can we take off of our security in order to keep up the facade that the economy is doing well? And I mean, gas prices aren't even that much lower. Take a look at diesel prices. Diesel prices have barely moved even after all of this oil has been drained from our strategic petroleum reserves. And they say here that Chinese firms are taking advantage of a remarkable profitable arbitrage for U.S. crude that has been suppressed because of the president's massive release from the SPR. This, ladies and gentlemen, in my opinion, is criminal. The American people are being betrayed. What if something happens? That SPR, right, to the government, to the country, is kind of like what my little fuel depot is to my family. Right, I have a little fuel depot where I keep enough gasoline, to keep enough gasoline, enough, gas and stuff like that, LP gas, to keep my family going for about a month, month and a half, if we stretch it out, in case something happens where all of the pumps stop pumping, right? Or things become so expensive that there's just no way that we can afford to buy it. That's why I keep that fuel depot stocked up. Same thing with the SPR. It is a way of keeping the country running in case something happens that is out of the control of the entire nation. And here we are draining it and not refilling it in order to try to fake the American people into thinking that the economy is doing better than what it is, when the economy is faltering. People are losing their jobs everywhere, but we have unemployment at 3.4%, the best in history from what I understand. Iraq to drop the dollar for yuan in trade with China. The dominoes are starting to fall. The Iraqi central bank announced Wednesday that for the first time it plans to allow trade from China to be settled directly in yuan instead of US dollars. Well, you know what? The last time I remember Iraq doing something like that, it wasn't for yuan, but it was for euros. The last time I remember Iraq saying, hey, we're going to start selling our oil for euros instead of dollars, something happened to the leader or to the dictator of that country. Do you all remember what that is? Go ahead and put it in a comment down below. And listen to this one, ladies and gentlemen. Israel and Saudi Arabia are holding talks on increasing military ties. If they're just reporting this, that they're holding talks on increasing military ties, it means that it's already happened. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is what we will have to look forward to should we keep going down the same road that we've been headed here for a while. South Africans are without electricity for 9 hours a day, right? Because of ginormous blackouts. Remember all these people that say, hey, we'll do whatever we have to do as long as it's going to help the environment. But these are people that are talking from their 2,000, 2,500 square foot homes that can turn on a switch any time of the day. They're willing to sacrifice a little bit, right? As long as it's going to save the environment. But we never think about those nations that are less fortunate than ours. And usually because it was at the hands of our own governments putting them in the positions that they're on. Well, here in Africa, an energy crisis is taking place in South Africa, which recently declared a state of disaster due to its energy crisis. An energy crisis, ladies and gentlemen, that's man-made. Right? This energy crisis that we've got going on right now is 100% man-made. Nothing from nature caused it. We did it to ourselves, but the countries that are emerging countries, that are poor countries, they're the ones that are really going to pay the price. And guess what happens when these emerging countries and real poor countries have destitute living conditions in their nations? Guess what happens? Mass migration. That's what happens, ladies and gentlemen. I just wanted to go over one last thing before we close it out for the day. Let me say thank you very much to all of you that were in yesterday's surprise live stream. And remember that during tomorrow's live stream on Friday, 2 p.m. Alaska time, 6 p.m. Eastern time, we're going to have some pretty cool giveaways. So I hope to see you there, because one of our sponsors, actually two of our sponsors, reached out and they're giving us some stuff to give away to you, our awesome community members. I wanted to point this out, ladies and gentlemen, because I've been hearing about this. I've gotten a couple of emails about this. The claim that the president is giving the World Health Organization control over U.S. healthcare and national sovereignty. So that's the claim. So this here is from USA Today. I know. So here they're talking about a Facebook post which showed amendments that the United States went ahead and gave to the WHO in order to add to, I guess, a former treaty that we had. And that these amendments are pretty much giving away U.S. sovereignty to the WHO. I believe I did a video on this a while back, and those amendments referred to are intended to strengthen a country's reporting measures on public health events. All right? Experts told the U.S.A. Today they would not grant the WHO any authority in the U.S. Well, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I don't think that this is going to be a problem. Let's say that it is true that the president gave over our sovereignty to the WHO. Do you really think that the American people are going to stand for it? Sure, the useful idiots will. The useful idiots will get in line, they'll ask for their slice of bread, and then they'll go ahead and put their masks on and then go sit on their couch and do whatever they do. But do you think the people are going to put up with a foreign dictator, which is, in my opinion, the W and then followed by an H and then followed by an O? It's just dictate by decree, all right, by fiat. You think we're going to let them do that? It's like I asked one day, I don't know if I did a poll, but we were talking about it, maybe in a live stream. Do you think that if blue helmets came into this country, that it would be taken lightly? I don't think so. This would be the same thing. But just to show you what it is that they say here, because what they say here kind of makes a little bit of sense, but I'm going to follow it up with something. The Biden administration drafted amendments in January to the international health regulations. So that is true that he drafted amendments. A legally binding agreement between 196 countries to detect and report public health events according to the, the C and the D and the C, and prevention. This agreement does not allow the WHO to dictate national healthcare policy or create binding law in the U.S. or any nation, according to the director of Georgetown University. Let's say that's all true. Let's say that this here agreement was just so that countries can give information voluntarily to the WHO. Why does it have to be an agreement? Let's say that if we have a real global, one of those things that starts with a P. Let's say that we have a real one. Don't you think that countries would want to cooperate with the experts that know most about it? So why do you have to draft up some kind of an agreement? So whether this fact checks out to be false or true, what does it really matter? Can you really believe the words that come out of governmental institutions anymore, ladies and gentlemen? That is why I often say, do your research. Learn to think for yourself, because you live in your own reality. You live in the reality that you make for yourself. So if you allow that reality to be something that someone tells you, then that's what it will be. But if you allow it to be a reality of your own free will, it's because you did your own research and you came to your own conclusions. And then you can live with the consequences of the decisions that you yourself made, but not that someone else made for you. Having said that, I hope you have a great day. I am going to put out a second video today, ladies and gentlemen. And I have a feeling that it may tick some people off, but I'm going to put it out anyways because I think that it is important for people to know this. In my opinion, it's kind of like a blockbuster of things that are just not taught in school anymore. And if they were, I believe that we would have a different world. Not just a different nation, but a different world. Having said that, I hope that you have a great day. Thank you very much for all of your support. Remember that Simpure is having a 20% off sale on their reverse osmosis systems. I will leave the link and the 20% off code on a pinned comment. It is a great deal. I mean, it's a really great deal, so I hope that you're taking advantage of it. God bless every one of you. God bless America. I'm Alaska Prepper. I'm out.